Hello and welcome to Unacademy IAS English, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. A very good morning and welcome to the daily Hindu news analysis. So let's begin the discussion by first looking at the topics that we are going to discuss. From the Delhi edition of the Hindu, I have chosen 8 important topics which are basically compressed into 6 articles in today's newspaper. So let's cover all these articles in complete detail so that you don't have to go back and read the newspaper again. And before we start, if you guys are liking this initiative and benefiting from the daily Hindu analysis, do support us with your likes and comments. Share the video with other aspirants as well. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Now, please join my Telegram channel as well by scanning the QR code on your screen, especially if you want the PDF of this session. After the session ends, I'll be sharing the PDF over here. Then also please note, especially 2025 prelims aspirants, Unacademy is conducting the prelims mock drill. This is an opportunity for you to attempt full-length mock test papers, both for GS and CSAT, and this is absolutely free. So the link for registering for the test is provided in the description box below, and you can also see the dates and the time on which the mock test will be conducted. So please make a note of this. So let's begin with the discussion and let's look at the first topic that we are going to discuss. Obviously, we'll be talking about the India-Pakistan ceasefire and all the developments surrounding it. So this would be a quick and a brief discussion because there are some key aspects to be discussed. Yesterday, we saw that both India-Pakistan held and maintained the ceasefire, which was called the day before yesterday. Now, after some normalcy and calm returned in the border areas, the Indian Armed Forces held a very important press briefing yesterday evening. It was headed by the DGMO, the Director General of Military Operations, along with senior operational commanders from all the 3 armed forces. This conference was very important because they gave us some details about the tactical nature of Operation Sindoor. Because during Operation Sindoor, when India was locked in this conflict with Pakistan, very few details were emerging regarding the ongoing military operations. There was a lot of disinformation, fake news that was spreading as well. So now the armed forces of India, they have shared at least a partial picture. Some of the tactical details of the operation have emerged with official confirmation. So that is what we need to talk about. And then we need to examine what was Operation Sindoor for India. Was it a success? Did we achieve the stated objectives? And what could be the impact of these events? Because there are few related articles in today's newspaper. There is an editorial as well, which provides us a broad overview of Operation Sindoor and the recent India-Pakistan clashes. Now, first, let's talk about some of the tactical details which could be relevant for us. The Indian commanders, they have informed clearly that Indian Armed Forces delivered decisive hits on high-value Pakistani military targets. See, when India launched Operation Sindoor, initially our target was only terror infrastructure of Pakistan. When the 9 strikes were carried out on the 7th of May by launching around 24 missiles, India's target was primarily the terrorist infrastructure. India's strikes, they were non-escalatory in nature. They were focused only on the terror facilities at Murid Ke, Bahawalpur, etc. And we made it clear to Pakistan that we don't have any intent to target civilians or the military infrastructure of Pakistan. India ensured very carefully, very cautiously to not touch the economic and energy infrastructure of Pakistan as well. But despite this, Pakistan retaliated, it escalated the conflict, and it forced Indian forces to defend the country and also mount counterattacks against Pakistan. So from 7th of May to 10th of May, during those 3 to 4 days, very serious escalations took place between both the sides. This is something we have been discussing over the last few days, with both sides engaging in a drone and missile war, and India successfully defending itself against Pakistani drone attacks and missile strikes. But Operation Sindoor saw very serious military escalation, including the deployment of a large fleet of fighter jets on active combat duty from both the sides. Based on what we are hearing from the Indian Air Force, also what Pakistani Air Force has informed. Based on this, some details have emerged, and apparently at one point there were hundreds of fighter jets, at least around 70 to 120 fighter jets in the air in total on both sides of the Indian airspace and the Pakistani airspace. So this could easily make it one of the biggest aerial battles that has been witnessed in modern times. And in this combat, Pakistan made an attempt to breach Indian airspace. It made attempts to hit military targets in India, from Baramulla to Srinagar to key targets in Punjab and Gujarat. But Indian Air Force not only defended successfully, but it has delivered decisive hits against Pakistan. There has been an indication from the military leadership that India did hit critical air bases of Pakistan, and this is very, very important from a tactical perspective. Around six key air bases of Pakistan have been hit, and according to unconfirmed media reports, Indian Air Force deployed the BrahMos, the aerial version of the BrahMos, which is fired from a fighter jet, most likely the Sukhoi 30 or possibly the Rafales. Indian Air Force has delivered a decisive hit on Pakistani air bases. Out of the six air bases that were hit, one air base stands out in particular, which is the Noor Khan Air Base, which is one of the most important military facilities of the Pakistani military establishment because of its strategic location, because of its relevance for Pakistan's military doctrine. The Noor Khan Air Base is located on the outskirts of Rawalpindi, which is where the Pakistani Army's HQ, the headquarters, is located. So India managed to strike deep inside Pakistan, right at the heart of the Pakistani deep state. Indian attack has delivered significant damage to these air bases as well. For example, one of the air bases in the Punjab province of Pakistan has become non-operational for several days. The runway has been severely damaged. That has been the impact of the Indian strike. And Noor Khan Air Base is also believed to be critical to Pakistan's nuclear doctrine. It is believed that some of the nuclear warheads and delivery systems are stored over here. And if at all Pakistan were to wage a nuclear war, this is where Pakistani jets are likely to take off, armed with nuclear weapons. So, this critical strategic base of Pakistan has been hit, and this is a major tactical victory for Indian armed forces. Because through Operation Sindoor, Indian armed forces have now established a new threshold with Pakistan. See, Pakistan had always created this paranoia, this dilemma for India that we will never be able to use conventional option against Pakistan to punish the country for its conventional warfare against India. When I say conventional warfare, I'm referring to traditional warfare in the traditional domain, using conventional forces like Army, Navy, and Air Force. When I'm referring to sub-conventional warfare, I'm referring to Pakistan's use of terrorism, a type of asymmetric warfare where Pakistani state is using non-state actors to attack India. And Pakistan has always believed that India will never be able to resort to a conventional war and hit Pakistani targets for terrorism because of its nuclear weapons, because of its formidable military strength. This myth, this bluff of Pakistan has been called out by Indian armed forces. India has shattered this myth, and this is a huge tactical victory for India. It sets a new threshold, a new precedent. Going forward, India has said any act of terror that emanates from Pakistan in any form, if Pakistan, let's say, has sponsored the group or armed an outfit or provided training and facilities for a terror group and it carries out an attack on India, any form of terrorism emanating from Pakistan will be treated by India as an act of war, which means India will reserve the right to resort to conventional strikes, striking deep inside Pakistan, not just hitting Pakistani terrorist targets, but even targeting military facilities and key command and control centers. It has also been reported that the Indian Air Force had locked on to few vital military structures in Pakistan to send out a warning, to send out a signal that if you escalate further, India will not hesitate to strike the nerve centers of the Pakistani military establishment. So this is possibly what pushed Pakistan, leading to panic in the Pakistani establishment and them reaching out to US, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey to immediately intervene and put pressure on India to agree to a ceasefire. So this new threshold which has been created marks a new doctrine with regard to India's deterrence against Pakistan-sponsored terrorism. The Modi government has essentially carved out a new doctrine in itself by creating this new threshold where India will go on to use conventional options to strike Pakistan for sponsoring terrorism against India. So this could become a strong deterrent going forward. It could possibly deter Pakistan from sponsoring terror attacks against India blatantly. So this is a very important point you need to note down. And also, the Indian armed forces have acknowledged that there might have been losses on the Indian side. Because in a combat scenario, losses are part of it. There have been a lot of rumors about Indian fighter jets being downed and India suffering heavy casualties as well. Though the Indian armed forces have not given out the details yet, they've at least almost accepted that there have been losses on the Indian side because it was not denied by the commanders who were addressing the press briefing. More importantly, they've shared some details regarding the damage that Pakistan has suffered. According to Indian assessment, close to 100 terrorists might have been killed in the initial strikes that India carried out, including those terrorists who are most wanted by India, who are globally designated by the UN, who are involved in the hijacking of IC-814, who are involved in various attacks such as the Pulwama and Pahalgam attacks. So in that regard, India has dealt a severe blow to the terror facilities and the terror leadership of Pakistan. And along with that, Pakistani military could have suffered severe losses as well. The Indian assessment is that anywhere between 35 to 40 Pakistani military personnel have been killed. And India has also said that we have not only targeted and successfully hit key military installations like air bases, but we also delivered a significant blow to Pakistani Air Force assets. At least few Pakistani fighter jets have been downed by India, either through surface to air missiles, through our air defense, or through Indian fighter jets, which engaged in an aerial combat using BVRMs, beyond visual range air to air missiles. This confirmation is very crucial, but still the details are pending. Still, the Indian Air Force and the armed forces have not given details regarding how many Pakistani jets might have been downed. Maybe those details will come out in the next few days, as the Indian Air Force has said. Going forward, after a few days, further details will be shared. Specific operational details will be shared as well in the coming days. And India has not denied its own losses, which in itself is a big step because the government was not allowing the information to flow, obviously for operational reasons, and also to not give an advantage to the adversary. So going forward in the coming days, we might hear about what losses did India suffer. Did India lose a fighter jet? It's almost indirectly confirmed by the top commanders, but we need the exact specific details. Was it a Rafale? Was it a Sukhoi? What was the damage suffered to Indian military sites, ammunition depots, storage dumps? Because these sites were targeted by Pakistan. So we might hear about this in the coming days. But despite this, as I said, what is important for us is that India has now created a new threshold. A new doctrine is now in place and a stronger deterrent against Pakistan-sponsored terrorism. So without a doubt, Operation Sindoor represents a tactical victory for Indian armed forces. Is that clear? It definitely represents a big tactical victory for Indian armed forces. Now, coming to the other aspect. What about the ceasefire? What about the role of the United States in possibly acting as a mediator between India and Pakistan? There has been considerable outrage in India regarding the decision of the government to agree to a ceasefire, that too with US involvement. What really triggered most Indians was that US President Donald Trump was the first to surprise the world by announcing the ceasefire even before India could bring this out in the open. India has officially said that there has been no mediation of sorts, that we did not seek any mediation from the US. It was Pakistani DGMO who reached out, who called on the hotline and connected with the Indian DGMO asking for a ceasefire, and India agreed to de escalate. That is the official version from the Indian side. But the global narrative is something else. If you look at the global narrative, it is being projected that it was United States with Saudi Arabia and Turkey who acted as mediators between India Pakistan. Global media, based on very highly placed sources, including sources in the White House, they are reporting that it was both India Pakistan which reached out asking for their help, their assistance to tone down the escalation. Because on one hand, Pakistan would have panicked considering India's decisive strikes on Pakistani military targets, especially the strike at Noor Khan Air Base, right at the heart of Rawalpindi. India could have also shown some jitters as Pakistan was looking to escalate further. So it has been reported in foreign media, based on certain credible sources, that both India Pakistan might have reached out through diplomatic and back channels, urging the intervention of these countries which had some influence with these two countries. Saudi Arabia did send out its deputy foreign minister who visited both India and Pakistan back to back, carrying a message from MBS, the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. It has been reported that the Secretary of State of the US, Marco Rubio, was constantly in touch with the leaders of India and Pakistan, pushing them to settle and de escalate. And it has now even been confirmed that US Vice President JD Vance even spoke to Prime Minister Modi, urging for immediate de escalation. Now, see, this is something which always happens. We have seen this in previous instances as well, be it the Kargil War, be it the nuclear tests in 98, the Pokhran tests, or be it Parliament attacks and Operation Parakram, or even after 26/11 attacks. Whenever tensions have remained very high between India and Pakistan, global powers will intervene. Obviously, they would be concerned about a bigger conflict with possible nuclear consequences. So, this is not something which is new. But what is new is that appears that India has compromised on a very, very important strategic goal. See, whenever we deal with Pakistan, India has one priority, at least in the last 5 decades. We've always tried to ensure that India Pakistan issues are always kept bilateral, whatever issue it is, be it the question of terrorism, be it the Kashmir issue, be it the other minor border issues that we have, or be it any trade related issue as well. We want any issue between India Pakistan to be dealt with bilaterally, just between India Pakistan, which means India doesn't want any sort of third party involvement. This is what India had ensured through the Shimla Agreement of 1972 after the 1971 war, where we used the leverage that we gained by splitting Pakistan into two parts, and we forced Pakistan to agree that any issues would be resolved bilaterally with no foreign or third party intervention. Be it UN, be it US or China, nobody would be involved in mediating between India and Pakistan. And finally, India has really pushed for de-hyphenation when it comes to foreign powers engaging with India Pakistan. See, at least until early 2000, global powers would always look at India Pakistan as equivalent powers who are placed similarly, who are equivalent to each other. Now, let's say foreign dignitaries, when they would visit Pakistan, they would visit India as well, right? And they would discuss the Kashmir issue. And whenever they would engage with India, they would engage with Pakistan parallelly. So they would see India Pakistan as equivalent powers. There was a hyphenation that India Pakistan are always together. Now, whenever US dealt with India, they would look at India from the Pakistan prism, from the Kashmir angle. Same with European powers as well. Now, this was affecting Indian interests. It was allowing foreign powers to meddle with our bilateral issues, with our internal matters, including Kashmir. India made it very clear that there should be no internationalization of our internal issues, and that includes the Kashmir issue. Pakistan has made many attempts to bring global attention to Kashmir. We have seen that in the recent past as well, by triggering unrest in Kashmir, by pushing the protesters to carry out stone pelting and using the visuals and images to internationalize the issue and accuse India of violating human rights, repeatedly carrying out terror attacks to draw international attention towards Kashmir. So Pakistan has been making constant attempt to internationalize Kashmir. So India has been very clear that there can't be any sort of internationalization. This is a bilateral issue to be resolved with Pakistan. We don't want third party involvement. And we have convinced the world to de-hyphenate India Pakistan, to look at India Pakistan separately, not as equivalent powers, not at the same footing. Successfully, India had de-hyphenated itself, as a result of which all the big powers, US, Europe, Saudi Arabia, UAE, all the top powers were dealing with India separately, parallelly, while maintaining separate relations with Pakistan. When they would engage with India, they would not look at India's relations with them through the Pakistani prism, through the Kashmir angle. Now, this had helped India protect its strategic interests, its long term strategic interests. But now, Donald Trump might have erased these gains in one single blow. The Indian government might have compromised by allowing US to play this role and by allowing the Trump administration to claim credit for the ceasefire. Because this will not stop at the ceasefire arrangement. Trump has already stated publicly that he would like to mediate between India and Pakistan over the Kashmir dispute. And it's not the first time he's doing this. He had stated this even during his first presidency. India had pushed back. But now, after mediating the ceasefire and claiming credit for it, now Trump has again stated that he is willing to settle the dispute between India and Pakistan over Kashmir. So Trump's posts on social media tells you a lot about how the Trump administration is looking at the India-Pakistan tensions. Initially, the Trump administration didn't want to do anything with the Kashmir issue and India-Pakistan. J.D. Vance made it very clear recently that US had no business being involved or getting involved between India-Pakistan. But now Pakistan has managed to drag the US back. Probably that was the intent behind Pahalgam attack. When Pakistani Army Chief Asim Munir delivered that divisive speech on 16th April, which possibly served as a basis for the Pahalgam attack, probably there was a deeper game plan in Rawalpindi involving the deep state of Pakistan to draw the US back and internationalize Kashmir to put India on the back foot. So Pakistan essentially wanted a military escalation from India. It wanted India to attack Pakistan. And this is also not happening for the first time. We have seen this before as well. Whenever the Pakistani army is facing a crisis of popularity, a crisis of global weakness, it has often resorted to such large-scale attacks on India, trying to invite a retaliation from India so that it can boost its own domestic popularity and draw global attention and draw global support and bring global powers to focus on India, Pakistan, and Kashmir. That is always a setback for India. International involvement is a setback. Third-party involvement is a setback. Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif also issued a statement yesterday. He thanked the US for its intervention for the ceasefire, and he has invited Trump. He has asked the United States to mediate over Kashmir between India and Pakistan. Now, this represents a strategic loss for Indian diplomatic interests, for our foreign policy and internal security interests. So Operation Sindoor might have been a tactical success, a tactical victory for the armed forces. New threshold was created, a new doctrine against terrorism has been created. But strategically, India might have lost out, at least for now, by allowing the US to play a role, by allowing foreign actors to get involved and even claim credit. Because look at the post that Donald Trump put out. He equated India, Pakistan, calling both of them as great nations. He said through trade, he would resolve the issue. So he's equating terrorism and Pakistan's vicious nature against India. And he somehow is believing that trade between US Pakistan and US India would resolve these problems. Essentially, he's equating money with blood. As simple as that, as blunt as that. So will this harm India's long-term strategic interests? Has India made a big diplomatic blunder? Because India had the leverage. See, it's not about dragging the war. Nobody wants war, right? But this was an escalation imposed on India by Pakistan. India had to retaliate. India had the leverage as well. Any ceasefire should have been on India's terms after extracting commitments from Pakistan. There should have been enforceable commitments from Pakistan. Only then India should have ideally agreed to a ceasefire. But now that the US has intervened and claimed credit, basically they are hyphenating India Pakistan again. After decades of effort, we had achieved dehyphenation. It convinced the rest of the world to look at India Pakistan differently, to not get involved in Kashmir, to leave Kashmir issue to India, to be handled bilaterally with Pakistan. Now, all this effort could be reversed within days, within weeks, because Donald Trump right now is personally invested in the India Pakistan relationship. As they have mediated the ceasefire, at least pushed both countries in some way for a ceasefire, they will get more actively involved in this. And this may not be good for India's long term interests. That's why many experts believe that though it is a tactical victory, it could be a strategic loss for Indian diplomatic and internal security interests. So, this is what we learn. And that is exactly what the editorial is also talking about. And there's one last point in the editorial, apart from what we have discussed. The editorial is now urging the government of India to be more transparent with the details of Operation Sindoor. Because obviously, during the course of the conflict, you can't expect the government and the armed forces to reveal all the information. Obviously, for tactical reasons, for operational security reasons, for national security reasons. Right? The whole media understood the necessity, and the Indian media stood behind the government and the armed forces, and they maintained a complete silence, not reporting on anything, even though they did have some verification. Right? The Indian public have stood behind the armed forces and the government as well. The nation has stood united. But now the time has come to evaluate, to check, and question the government as well, because that is what should happen in a democracy. What were the losses suffered on the Indian side? See, there is no loss of pride in admitting the losses. Losses are expected. It's a part and parcel of a combat scenario. That's exactly what the commander of the Indian Air Force stated as well. The DGMO stated this as well. Suffering losses in a conflict situation is part and parcel of it. There's no loss of honor, loss of pride in admitting to that. Of course, it can't be admitted during the course of the conflict, as it could give an advantage to the enemy. But now that the ceasefire is being maintained, in the coming days, if not immediately in the next week or in the next month, there has to be more clarity from the government regarding what exactly happened. What were the losses on the Indian side? How many fighter jets did we lose? What military sites were hit? What was the casualties suffered on the Indian side? Right now, in the press briefing yesterday, the armed forces have admitted to 5 casualties, and they have paid homage to these brave hearts, to these martyrs. The whole nation pays homage to these 5 soldiers who have sacrificed themselves, and this has been publicly acknowledged by the government, by the armed forces. But are there any more losses, be it of military assets or military personnel? That is something which has to be confirmed from the government. So editorial is urging the government to maintain transparency. There is a need for the government to brief the opposition, to call for an all-party meeting. Because after the Pahalgam attack, when India was preparing its military response and its diplomatic response against Pakistan, the government did call for an all-party meeting, where all the opposition parties stood with the government, backed the government unitedly, without playing politics over this issue. But however, one concern was expressed that the Prime Minister did not attend the all-party meeting. In such a critical situation, how can you not have the Prime Minister heading the all-party meeting, briefing the opposition, bringing them on board, building consensus? So this has been highlighted by the opposition now. They are calling for a convening of a session in the parliament, discuss the issue on the floor of the House, maintain transparency, brief the opposition, and also have another all-party meeting regarding what has happened, give a update, and also chart the way forward, so that you can take the entire nation together. The opposition, the public, the citizens, the media, right? They should be taken on board by the government by sharing the details and being transparent about it. So this is what we learn from all these articles. As I said, there are few conceptual areas that we have discussed, right? The tactical victory for India, the new threshold and the new doctrine. Please make a note of that. Then also remember the strategic impact, the long-term strategic consequences because of US involvement, right? That is what we learn. And based on that, please take up this practice question for your answer writing practice. So I hope the topic is clear. Now, let's move on to the next article. We have another important editorial related to the role of the high courts in upholding your fundamental rights, in protecting your fundamental rights. See, the high courts are also responsible to protect your fundamental rights under the writ jurisdiction of the High Court. I'm sure you must be aware of Article 226, which provides writ jurisdiction to the High Courts. So, along with the Supreme Court, the High Courts also share a jurisdiction when it comes to these writs, which can be issued to protect your fundamental rights, to enforce your fundamental rights. Now, in a recent case, there has been some concern regarding how the High Courts have been dealing with fundamental rights. This case relates to Wikipedia versus ANI. ANI is a popular media channel, right? Then Wikipedia, as all of you know, is a very popular internet platform considered as an online encyclopedia. So Wikipedia is essentially an internet-based platform which provides an infrastructure where the users will contribute the information, where verified users following the strict guidelines of Wikipedia, they source content and information through existing sources. They can't create their own theses or content or express their own views or opinions. By relying on existing sources like verified newspaper sources, verified research work, by drawing such content, the creators can create content which can help others and serve as an online encyclopedia of information, right? So essentially, as per the IT rules, Wikipedia can be seen as an intermediary. It is an online intermediary. It's an online platform where Wikipedia Foundation, it's a not-for-profit foundation, which has created this infrastructure, a platform where contributors can come together, follow the strict guidelines of Wikipedia, and create content. Essentially, provide information on almost everything in the world by sourcing authentic, genuine, verifiable information from legitimate sources. They can't create their own content. There is a internal review and modification process inbuilt into Wikipedia's system. But however, there have been many instances where Wikipedia edits have attracted controversy, especially when controversial views and opinions are expressed. There is a possibility that some of the users might have a vested interest. They might try to edit the pages in such a manner that it could tarnish the image of their enemy, or they might harm the reputation of their opponents. So recently, ANI filed a case against Wikipedia as the page on ANI on Wikipedia contained few defamatory posts according to ANI, alleging that ANI was a mouthpiece of the government, alleging that it was working at the behest of Indian intelligence agencies, pushing Indian propaganda. This was the allegation which was brought up on this Wikipedia page. So ANI obviously retaliated against this by filing a litigation and dragging Wikipedia to court. The court, one of the lower courts which dealt with it, has ordered the takedown of the page. Now the matter has reached the Supreme Court as well. And in a related case concerning Wikipedia, Delhi High Court recently passed a judgment which is quite concerning and quite controversial. A few months ago, a single bench judge of the Delhi High Court had ordered the takedown of a controversial Wikipedia webpage article. This webpage article was taken down. But later, the content creators who are the users on Wikipedia platform, they created an alternate page where they criticized the judgment of the Delhi High Court. They criticized the judgment of the Delhi High Court judge, pointing out that this is a blatant violation of right to free speech and free expression, which is guaranteed as a fundamental right under Article 19, 1 Clause A. So they created one more page, now criticizing the judgment of the Delhi High Court itself, that the order of the Delhi High Court to take down this page on the grounds of defamation is a clear violation of fundamental right under Article 19, 1 Clause A. Now, this Delhi High Court judge who became aware of this Wikipedia page, which was criticizing his judgment, he saw this as contempt of court. The Delhi High Court judge interpreted this critical view where a new page had been created criticizing the judgment of the Delhi High Court, and he called this as contempt of court and ordered the takedown of this page as well. The Wikipedia page, which was critical of the High Court's judgment, was ordered to be taken down immediately, and Wikipedia approached the Supreme Court. Wikipedia took this matter to the Supreme Court. Now the Supreme Court has intervened. The Supreme Court has ruled that discussing a judgment of a court, criticizing it as well, cannot qualify as contempt of court, even though the matter is sub judice. It is the right of the public, the people who enjoy a fundamental right. You have a right to know under Article 19. You have a right to free expression under Article 19. And the Supreme Court has recognized this. And it has placed a stay order on the ruling of the Delhi High Court. The Supreme Court has stayed the Delhi High Court order to take down this Wikipedia page, which was critical of the High Court's judgment. So that shows that High Courts in general are not very sensitive when it comes to essential fundamental rights. The Supreme Court has recognized it, that right to know, right to free expression is integral to Article 19(1) Clause A, and the public have a right to know about court judgments. They have a right to criticize it, review it, express their views and opinions. That is how a participatory democracy is built. So the editorial has pointed out that high courts in general have become more tolerant of violation of fundamental rights. High courts themselves are enabling the undermining of fundamental rights, which is quite concerning. That's why the editorial is urging the high courts to be more sensitive when it comes to any litigation concerning fundamental rights of the citizens. So the Supreme Court has done the right thing by setting aside this order where the Delhi High Court had ordered this Wikipedia page to be taken down. Now this order has been stayed and the matter is being heard by the Supreme Court. The case involving Wikipedia continues at the Supreme Court. So from this article, we take away a very important point that high courts have to be more sensitive towards fundamental rights. If high court judgments are being reviewed, discussed, and even criticized, it has to be welcomed. It's part of the fundamental right you have to know about everything, to express your views about everything. And that can't be interpreted as contempt of court, even though the matter is sub judice. So please make a note of this case as it involves basic fundamental rights under Article 19. Such a basic question can be asked by UPSC. There is a need for high courts to be more sensitive to fundamental rights, elucidate. So this could be one of the examples you can use to back up and justify your argument. You can talk about the role of high courts in protecting, upholding fundamental rights. You can talk about the writ jurisdiction. The High Court's writ jurisdiction is much wider, by the way, than that of the Supreme Court. Mention the article as well, right? Mention examples of these cases. The Wikipedia ANI case can be cited as the example, and point out how the Supreme Court had to intervene to ensure that the fundamental rights of citizens is protected, which includes the right to criticize a court judgment, to review a court judgment, discuss it publicly. That public debate is healthy, it is necessary in a democracy. That can't be seen as contempt of court. Is that clear? So now let's look at the next big article related to Indian economy. This article is specifically focused on India's manufacturing growth. So let's break down this article in simple words and understand the viewpoint of the author. The author is a former IAS officer with incredible experience in shaping Indian economy and the policies of the Indian government. So based on his expertise, the writer is talking about the shift which is happening in global manufacturing. I'm sure all of you would be aware of the paradigm shift that we are witnessing in global manufacturing today. Today, global manufacturing is driven by high technology. Now, if you talk to your parents or your grandparents, let's say, about industries and factories, let's say back in the 70s, 80s, or 90s, that was a completely different era where manufacturing was more simple. Manufacturing just meant assembly lines. Manufacturing meant these factories where laborers would put in their hard work, make these goods and components, largely through physical hard work. The technological involvement would be less. Physical labor would be more. This is the traditional sense of an industry or a factory. But today, this has started changing. It has already changed, in fact, right in front of our eyes. In the last 20 years, the world has entered the fourth stage of the industrial revolution, where today assembly lines are automated, run by robots, not by humans. Manufacturing processes have been automated, and AI, Internet of Things, and data analytics has been taking over the world of manufacturing today. So, high end technology is driving the global transformation in manufacturing. So, those countries which have an edge in high technology, in research and development, they would be the leaders of manufacturing tomorrow. Now, you take, for example, China. China is a global leader in manufacturing. It occupies the biggest share in global manufacturing, controls most of the supply chains. Why? Because even in the 80s and 90s, China championed the right policies, created the right infrastructure, opened up its markets, made strategic investments, leveraged its cheap labor and access to raw materials to power the industrial growth of China. It became the manufacturing backyard of the world. And now China is channeling the focus on high technology, on innovation, research, and development, increasing investments in scientific research, creating a space for innovation and development of high tech products, which is entering the manufacturing chain, giving China a severe advantage, a lead over other countries. Then you have United States on the other hand, which is also a global leader in high end technology, but it's not a leader in manufacturing. So, to address this discrepancy, Trump's policy is to levy tariffs and wage a tariff war, hoping that this would bring back manufacturing into the US. So, right now, the world is in the midst of a shift, a paradigm shift in global manufacturing. On one hand, new advances in technology, especially AI, etc., and related critical emerging technologies, are driving fundamental changes in how manufacturing works. On the other hand, geopolitics, trade wars are defining the shifts which are happening in supply chains. So the question is, where does this leave India? Where does India stand with regard to manufacturing? See, India has seen considerable growth in manufacturing ever since the economic reforms of 1991. Post LPG reforms, as India liberalized, privatized, and globalized and opened up its economy, the country has definitely seen phenomenal growth in manufacturing, especially in some sectors like textiles, pharmaceuticals, automobiles, electronics as well to an extent. So, in some of these sectors, India has seen phenomenal growth, and MSME industry has been driving that growth. The medium, small, micro enterprises with few large conglomerates. But however, India does not occupy a significant share of global manufacturing, and that is a matter of concern. Now, if you look at the value added in manufacturing, it is actually a key indicator. The value addition which is being done in the economy on a per capita basis. So if you look at per capita value added in manufacturing in India and compare it with rest of the world, with other industrialized and manufacturing powerhouses of the world, India lags behind most of the countries. China obviously is at the top. Even US and European powers, the industrialized nations like Japan, South Korea, they are miles ahead of India. Forget these developed industrialized countries. Maybe we are not in competition with them. Even the middle economies, let's say you take Southeast Asian industrial economies like Vietnam or even Indonesia to an extent. These countries are much ahead of India. Malaysia, for example, stands ahead of India when you take per capita value added in manufacturing as an indicator to compare the manufacturing growth and the manufacturing potential of these countries. So the writer is very clear that India still has a lot to do to catch up. See, over the last 2 decades, India has tried few policies which has worked pretty well. For example, the then UPA government under Prime Minister Manmohan Singh implemented the National Manufacturing Competitiveness Program in 2005, which gave a significant boost to manufacturing in the country to promote self reliance. Later, when the Modi government came to power, a significant push was given by the Prime Minister himself with the Make in India initiative launched in 2014. And today, the Prime Minister and the administration is driving India towards becoming Atmanirbhar. Atmanirbharatas or self reliance has become the mantra of each and every sector of India's economy today. So the governments have tried doing the right thing. The government has even come out with a PLI scheme, performance linked incentive scheme, to promote specific sectors like automobiles, pharmaceuticals, textiles, etc., electronics as well. So there have been few right policies in the right direction, which has boosted India's manufacturing potential, but we are still many, many miles behind other global manufacturing powerhouses. So what should India do to reach that stage, to reach that level, where we will also enter the next stage of industrial production and manufacturing? There are two simple steps for India, which the writer is suggesting. One is to increase our investments in R&D. We are not investing enough in research and development. Right now, public investment in R&D is just 0.65% of our GDP. If you compare this with others, there are countries investing 2 to 3% of their GDP on R&D, which is many times higher than what India is investing. In other countries, most investments in R&D is coming from private sector, private capital, not from governments. But in India, it's the other way around. In India, the biggest investor in R&D and innovation is the government itself, not the private sector, which means enough private capital is not being channeled towards research and development. So the writer is suggesting that public investments in R&D should jump to 2% of our GDP. We should encourage more private capital to be channeled into R&D and innovation. Why? Because we understood at the beginning that the new industrial paradigm is driven by high-end technology. New technological advancements are driving the paradigm shift in global manufacturing. So if India has to catch up, if India has to compete with rest of the world, we need more innovation to happen in our country, more products, more technologies, new processes to come out of India. So this will call for significant increase in public investments, up to 2% of our GDP from the government alone, with significant private capital investment in R&D. Now, apart from investment, we need one more thing. We need human capital. India is lacking human capital in this sector. See, we have sufficient engineers. We have sufficient skilled workers. But problem is, they're not being given the right experience, especially during their college. I'm sure there are many engineers watching this session, right? In fact, majority of those who prepare for UPSC exams happen to be engineers. Now you tell me honestly in the comments, can you tell me in the comments, did your college education give you enough practical knowledge? Were you confident when you graduated that you could take a job and perform the job without any training? If you've completed a 4-year degree, why should you be trained further? What is the need for further training? Why should a factory, why should a company invest in your training again if you have attended a 4-year degree program? The fault is not with you. The fault is with the education system itself. The fault is with the whole engineering system which has been created. Most students blindly opt for engineering, given that there is some sort of stigma with other streams, right? Most students don't know why they are taking engineering, right? And the branch as well, the specific branches they opt for, they have no clue why they are opting for it. And after they enter engineering college, they are largely kept in class. You're forced to attend your classes. Attendance is made very strict, right? You show no interest in learning, in improving your academic performance. The learning largely becomes theoretical. Lectures after lectures, with hardly any practical experience. Yes, there are labs, there are some practical classes, but that is not enough to prepare you for the real world. The real world is very different. To work in an industry, to work in a factory, to innovate, to contribute to new technology in an industry, you need hands-on experience, you need practical experience, which is currently missing in our colleges, in our universities. So the writer is correctly pointing out the problem lies over here in our education system, in our higher education, where we are not giving the right training and skills to our human capital. You are focusing them, you are pushing them to focus on marks. Maybe in our generation, the focus was on marks. Now it is GPA, right? It's about your CGPA. Eventually, it doesn't matter whether you got a 9 GPA or a 7 or a 4 GPA. What matters at the end of the day is whether you have enough skills to work in factories, to work in industries, right? Most engineering students, what is unfortunate is that they end up taking jobs in the services industry, in the IT industry. Then why did you study mechanical engineering? Why did you study electrical engineering? Right? There are civil engineers who get a IT job. There are electrical engineers who take up a software job. So there is something fundamentally wrong in India's higher education and in the job market as well. So the writer is calling for focus on practical classes, practical experience. Let's say you have 8 classes in a day or 6 classes in a day. The writer is of a strong opinion that at least half of it should be for practical labs outside the classroom, not sitting in a classroom listening to theory and lecture. Of course, theory is important, concepts are important, but practical experience is equally or rather more important. So, this is something India should focus upon. Then, also in the country, we have a number of youth, right, who are ready to take up jobs. They may not have an engineering degree, they may not have higher education, but they can be trained, they can be skilled to perform the manual labor which is needed in factories and industries. Today, we are pushing our engineers to do the low skill job and leaving behind those without education jobless, which is a fundamentally flawed approach. You need to provide basic training and skills with those with limited education, employ them for physical labor, and use the engineers for research, for innovation. That is their job. That is why they became engineers. Not to perform a basic role in an IT company or not to perform physical labor in a factory. Engineers were there to innovate, come out with new processes. And this is missing in India's manufacturing industry, largely missing when you compare, let's say, with China. If this is not fixed, the investment part and the human capital part, then India cannot become a manufacturing powerhouse. That is why the writer is calling for a fundamental reset in India's manufacturing outlook. Government can come up with n number of policies. Eventually, it will not have the right impact if there aren't enough investments in R&D, if we do not have the right human capital, right? So let me know what you think about this, because many of you would have some experience with this. Many of you would be engineers. Let me know what you think in the comments. What should India do to transform engineering education? How do we focus on core engineering? How do we ensure engineers remain in their respective fields and not go take up some random job in the service sector? Right? That's not why you took up an engineering degree in the first place. So let me know what you think about this. It's a debatable topic. Let's discuss this in the comments. Now we are coming to the last part of today's session, the prelim section. There are 3 articles. We can quickly wrap it up. On page 4, there are 2 updates which mention 2 important tiger reserves in the country. This article is mentioning the Annamalai Tiger Reserve in Tamil Nadu. The Tamil Nadu Forest Department is taking up the periodic pre-monsoon census to count the number of tigers as per the protocols laid down by the National Tiger Conservation Authority, and also to count the predators, the co-predators which are present, along with the prey base, and also evaluate the health of the habitat and the ecosystem. So these are periodic surveys which are conducted in protected areas. So Annamalai Tiger Reserve is mentioned over here. So let's talk about Annamalai Tiger Reserve. And below that, there is a tragic event which has occurred in the Ranthambore Tiger Reserve in Rajasthan. A forest range officer has been mauled to death, killed by a tiger. So this represents a case of man-animal conflict. So let's talk about Annamalai Tiger Reserve, and next we'll talk about the Ranthambore Tiger Reserve as well. The Annamalai Tiger Reserve, it is located in the Anaimalai Hills, stretching across Coimbatore and Tirupur districts of Tamil Nadu. If you look at the vegetation present here, it has tropical deciduous, dry deciduous forests in the higher reaches of the mountains, which is part of the Western Ghats, by the way. You find montane shrubs and chola grasslands in the higher reaches. So it's a very rich vegetation, a unique biodiversity. And the Annamalai Tiger Reserve, which is a protected area declared under Wildlife Protection Act, which is essentially administered by the NTCA. It's one of the most important tiger reserves in southern India, in the Western Ghats region. It's not only home to the threatened tigers, the Bengal tigers, it also has many other important endangered species, threatened species. It is home to the elephants, the Indian elephant, it is home to the Nilgiri Thar, right? Leopards are also found over here. The lion-tailed macaw is also found in large numbers. So Annamalai Tiger Reserve is a very important habitat, a biodiversity-rich region. It is also home to indigenous communities, tribal communities. It is blessed with anthropological diversity. There are few indigenous tribes which have a rich history behind them, such as the Kadars, Malasars, Pulayars, Budugars, the Eravalars or the Eravalans. These are some of the indigenous tribal communities which inhabit the Annamalai protected area. Is that clear? Now, coming to Ranthambore, it's one of the most famous, most important national parks in the country, a tiger reserve as well. And there's a rich history behind it. It was established by the royals as the Savai Madhapur Game Sanctuary, where the royals would go on hunting, on gaming drives, along with British officials. Post independence, it was turned into a national park, a protected area. And under Project Tiger, it was one of the initial tiger reserves to be set up in the country. Even today, Ranthambore is widely popular amongst foreign tourists. It has a very healthy tiger population, and the vegetation you find here is largely dry, deciduous, and grasslands, dry grasslands. So it is bound by the Banas River in the north and the Chambal River in the south. This is the geographical location of Ranthambore Tiger Reserve, and the legendary Ranthambore Fort is also present within the protected area. It was built in the 10th century by the Chahamanas of Ranastambapura, which is of great historical cultural significance. There is a very sacred Jain and as well as a Hindu temple within the precincts of the Ranthambore Tiger Reserve. So, knowing these basic facts about our protected areas can be important for a prelims question. Next, on the same page, we have another article related to a threatened species, which is the Indian grey wolf. You might have heard of the Indian wolf, right? The Indian wolf is distributed across the Indian subcontinent, stretching across South Asia, spreading into parts of Southeast and Southwest Asia as well. That is the traditional range of the Indian wolf. But there is a subspecies of the Indian wolf called the Indian grey wolf. Indian grey wolf is a subspecies of the Indian wolf. The Indian grey wolf, it inhabits some of the drier or grassland areas of India, especially central parts of India, uh, even some parts of Rajasthan, interior parts of Karnataka, Telangana, Maharashtra, etc. So the Indian grey wolf plays a critical role in any habitat. It's one of the top predators. It keeps a check on the population of the other species. It maintains a balance in the food chain. Is that clear? But today, Indian grey wolves are being threatened, especially in the Kadbanwadi grassland near Pune. Near Pune, there is a protected area, a wildlife sanctuary, the Bigwan Wildlife Sanctuary in the Pune district, where it is known for this dry grassland, a very popular grassland, the Kadbanwadi grassland. So here, the Indian grey wolf is facing a big threat. They are being driven towards extinction. Locally, they have become endangered. Though IUCN lists the Indian wolf as least concern, locally, this subspecies has become endangered. So it has been given the highest degree of protection by India. It is a Schedule 1 animal under Wildlife Protection Act, which means hunting this animal is a criminal offense. It also is listed on Appendix 1 of the CITES Convention, the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, which prohibits the trade of Appendix 1 species. It's on the Appendix 1 of CITES. It's on Schedule 1 of Wildlife Protection Act. So it enjoys the highest degree of protection. But today it's being threatened by feral dogs, which carry deadly pathogens. Usually, dogs are reared by the local community, the local habitations, hamlets which are present, the villagers, usually the shepherd community, right? As they take the sheep and cattle for grazing, they often use dogs as guards to protect the herd. And these dogs are often known to group up, gang up, and attack the grey wolf. And this also results in the transmission of a deadly pathogen, the CDV. the canine distemper virus, which is a very, very infectious disease. It's a highly contagious disease that can spread from dogs to the wolves. So this is spreading the disease as well. And dog attacks have increased on the grey wolf, thereby threatening the species and the survival of this subspecies, driving them towards extinction. That is something you need to note down. So please take a note of these key points, the key facts which I've added over here regarding the Indian wolf and the grey wolf, which is a subspecies of the Indian wolf. Coming to the last article in today's newspaper, there's an article that focuses on the total fertility rate of India at the national level and also at the state level. Now, what is total fertility rate? TFR is nothing but the average number of children a woman is going to bear in her lifetime during her reproductive age. So, the average number of children that are born by a woman becomes the TFR, the total fertility rate. Now, this is a critical indicator for population planning, for demography analysis, for population stabilization. If you want to stabilize your population, there is an ideal TFR, which is known as replacement level fertility rate, which is 2.1. Replacement level fertility rate is 2.1. That is, if a couple have two children on an average, basically you're replacing yourself with two more people, right? So at a certain point, your population will stabilize if you maintain replacement level fertility of 2.1. If TFR falls below 2.1, right, on an average, if people are having, let's say, around one or two kids, then essentially you will be seeing a population decline in the coming decades with significant increase in aging population, which is what has happened with many developed countries like Italy, Japan, South Korea. They're dealing with aging population as their fertility rates fell way below replacement level fertility. Clear? But if TFR is above 2.1, if it is 2.5, if it is 3 and above, right, then it means your population is exploding, especially in rural areas, in backward areas, right, where the tendency is to have more children, 3, 4 children and above. There you will see significant jump in TFR rate, and it means in the coming decades you will see a significant population explosion leading to a demographic challenge, which means you'll have more youth who are looking for jobs. So if you don't give them education, skills, and a job, you will be wasting your demographic dividend, right? Which also means the population jump could become a burden on governance. So either extreme population or declining population is both a risk for any country. Having a stable ideal population is what is necessary. So the Registrar General of India conducts a very, very important exercise, which I discussed yesterday as well. The SRS, the Sample Registration Survey. Please make a note of this. The SRS report brought out by the Registrar General of India under the Ministry of Home Affairs. The Registrar General of India is the one which carries out the census, the decennial census. Apart from the census exercise, there is another critical demographic exercise carried out by the Registrar General, which is the SRS report, the Sample Registration System report. This report tracks mortality rate and fertility rate in the country. That's why yesterday we discussed about maternal mortality, infant mortality rate based on the findings of SRS report. So today we are talking about fertility related findings, the TFR. So according to this report, India has achieved the replacement level fertility at a national level. The total fertility rate has gone down to 2, which is below replacement level fertility, which means we are on a path to see a decline in our population in our coming decades. Means we will see that the aging population will increase, at least in some parts of the country. But however, India is very diverse, right? The average might be 2 below replacement level fertility, but it varies from region to region. Certain states, urban areas especially, have much lower TFR. So urban TFR is at an average of 1.6, which means urban areas, the more developed states in India, they are seeing already a population decline and they will have a significant burden of aging population. So this is going to pose governance related challenges, economic challenges in the coming decades. But there are rural pockets in the country, backward states in the country, backward regions where TFR remains higher, much higher than replacement level fertility, which means in those states and regions, population will continue to increase. So there will be more number of youth looking for jobs. This poses a unique challenge, a unique demographic challenge. So just look at the report here. the state-wise assessments. A state like Bihar has registered the highest TFR. Bihar has a TFR of 3, means on an average, a woman is having 3 children. And this means Bihar is still on the population explosion curve. Whereas Delhi, West Bengal have reported the lowest TFR with 1.4. And as of now, Kerala faces the biggest challenge with regard to elderly population, with a significant jump in the population who is in the age group of 60 years and above. Out of the total population, almost 14.4% of Kerala's population, they are senior citizens. And this is only going to increase further. Whereas across the country, if you look at the demographic dividend, the working age population who are economically active in the age group of 15 to 59 years, there has been an increase from 53 to 66% over the last few decades. And if you look at population in the 0 to 14 age group, it has seen a decline. The percentage increase has seen a decline. It was 41.2% in 1971. It has come down to 24.8% in 2021, which means family planning, population stabilization programs have worked, given results, at least in some parts of the country. Those states which better implemented family planning, which focused on better education, reproductive rights, women empowerment, which brought about economic growth, those states have done well when it comes to population stabilization. States like Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Maharashtra, Kerala, even Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, Gujarat as well, they have done very well. But states like Bihar, UP, they are lagging behind, and the TFR remains higher, posing a completely different set of challenge. So these numbers, the data is very significant. It's going to play a very big role in policy making. This could play a role in let's say recommendations of finance commission where the funds are devolved. It could play a role in delimitation as well, right? The data would also help in the census which is being planned. So this is a critical data that is brought out by the RGI, the SRS report. So please take down the key pointers, the key facts that I've marked over here. There can be a factual question based on this. So that is it. On this note, I would like to end the discussion for now. If you have any doubts, any questions, please let me know. I can spare a couple of minutes maybe to take few questions and doubts. Fiza Azam says even southern states are aging. Yes, southern states are aging because their TFR has fallen below replacement level fertility. For example, I already told you Kerala has 14.4% of their population who are above 60 years. Karnataka has a TFR of 1.6, which means Karnataka will also face the same problem. Tamil Nadu as well. Maharashtra, Gujarat as well. Okay. I'm not seeing any other questions here. That's it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next class. Take care. Have a good day.